remember that they're changing my voice. This video is about the obvious rules for a logical American society, as opposed to this evil society that is in America and in every country in the world are these evil societies. But here we're talking about America, where people are complicit with all kinds of horrible things. And by the end of this video, you should know what they're complicit with, and you should understand what needs to be done. So before I get into point number one, keep in mind that it is immoral for anyone to breed at this point due to technology, breeding, cheating, and generational ill-gotten gains. So this video is about what is logical after people aren't smart enough to stop breeding, right? And what is logical for the time being. So point number one. Obviously, America should be a free, multicultural society, and people should not have a racial imperative. Okay. I consider that to be very self-evident, very obvious. America should be a free, right? People shouldn't be canceling cultures. They shouldn't be oppressing them. There shouldn't be a totalitarian imperative. It shouldn't be an authoritarian system. They should not be doing what they're doing. Clearly, all freedom should be within the boundaries of moral precision, and it is sad that I even have to point this out, and I mean in reality, not propaganda, not racial supremacy, but in the boundaries of what is morally precise in reality. So let us take the case of Santa Cruz, California, as I am very familiar with it historically. And it is a multicultural beach city historically where many whites, Jews, and LGBT people try to keep it white heavy and white culture heavy. White, Jewish, and LGBT heavy. It's a great example. You'll see what I mean. Why should a city have a covert agenda to be white heavy and white culture heavy, right? And Jew and LGBT heavy and Jew and LGBT culture heavy. Why should that be the case? Why should any city? Why not just have your culture and people who understand, who want to be in your culture, people who see it, just go to your culture. Why sabotage anyone? Why have a covert agenda? Why gang stalk people? Why, do what whites did during segregation and have this strong social control system that is crazy, that is very sick? Okay. And part of that is keeping the ghetto the ghetto. They're doing this in a city that for the last 50 plus years has been not only a multicultural city, but there were even hippies there. So now picture, if you will, Santa Cruz, California. Matter of fact, I'll use that as the picture on the screen if I remember. This city where it was so multicultural, there was a lot of hippies there. Some people with dreadlocks. Okay, it was part of the LSD kind of revolution that was taking place, right? The 60s hit there pretty hard. The hippies. Okay. It's one of the most liberal places on the planet. You might even consider the most liberal place on the planet historically. What does that say about the planet, the country? What does that say about people when they have a covert agenda to be white, Jewish, and LGBT heavy, and white, Jew, and LGBT culture heavy? And sometimes it shows its ugly face when they tell you things like, you're not supposed to do that for no reason, right? For no good reason. They try to put in extra laws to try to tell you what to do. It is a city with a fairly large theme park and a beach. It is a tourist spot on top of everything else. Think about that. Think about the sheer insanity of people who try to tell people to be a certain way and to be in a certain culture in a tourist spot that's supposed to be the most liberal place on the planet or something to that effect. Okay, keep in mind that did not stop white, Jew, and LGBT social controllers, social engineers, what have you, from gentrifying people, including whites, Jews, and LGBT people themselves, so they don't fit certain criteria. That did not stop them from doing that. I'm not saying this to be racist. I'm not a racist. I'm trying to help you understand what's going on, what the problems are in society. I have many models where all the races can get along. I have region arguments. There's many ways. It starts with discussing things honestly and being fair, having certain economic adjustments. It's very simple to solve these problems. Let's continue here. In recent years, there has been gentrification to a large degree, right? They have been heavily gentrifying the city of Santa Cruz, and they made it expensive to live there. There are various hate groups in the area, including in Scotts Valley. They just right by it. I'm not saying that they're the main ones doing it. They're like part of the muscle. We'll get to that. Also, the Mexican mafia that runs the major Hispanic gangs there is historically more or less aligned to the Aryan Brotherhood, which is the most dominant white prison gang. Clearly, there's an agenda at play here, and it is perhaps considered the most harmless, famous city in California. I'm not saying this to try to single out the Mexican mafia or Aryan Brotherhood. I'm just simply explaining how things work here. What does that tell you about the state of multiculturalism? So as people are gentrified out of Santa Cruz, we can see the failure of white supremacy, Jewish supremacy, and LGBT supremacy. And it is very similar to how Palestinians were treated historically and the weak justifications for it. So why are they letting the economy go to hell while playing stupid about the obvious fixes? Why don't they have cost-effective social programs? Why don't they have logical wealth taxes? And if people don't want to pay wealth taxes who are wealthy, okay, the state can take over their business and have these brilliant people who graduate college all the time take over their business or start up businesses that compete with them and label them war on poverty plan businesses, and people support them, and hey, there you go. The tax money that they, contribute would be replaced. It's basically that simple. Yeah, it's, it might take a few years for it to kick in, but it's not a big deal at all. Not a big deal at all. So there's weak justification, just like for the Palestinians. If you're a Jewish person and you don't want people to say things that you might see as favoring the Palestinians, okay, I'm sorry, but even though I shouldn't be sorry, I'll say, just to be polite, okay, but it's a priceless example. You can't just take people's land and say you must be right about your religion that has many factions, denominations, what have you, that's connected to Christianity and Judaism, which are basically, in a sense, factions and denominations of Judaism, right? They went a certain way with it, right? In that sense, like what Mormonism is to Christianity is what Christianity and Islam is to Judaism. So there's tens of thousands of, there's at least 30, 40, 50,000 denominations in that sense of Judaism and different opinions. You can't just say, hey, we're right about this book who no one even knows who wrote, and therefore they must fork over the land. That is not justice. And none of you have the moral high ground to say that your interpretation is right. I have the moral high ground, and you're not rallying to me. Again, the answer to the conflict in the Middle East is to discuss things and for me to be present and have the final say. And I'm very fair, very fair. If people reach out to me with a repentant and sincere heart, okay, I'm sure that the solution would be something that they could find acceptable. If they stop being greedy, they give up their greed and they're being sincere, we could solve that problem just like the gentrification in Santa Cruz. There's strong parallels. They're strong. The Jews are even a part of the, who's doing in the Middle East, right? Well, there's a bunch of white Jewish and there's a global LGBT agenda, right? So America and its allies, Israel, and they're gentrifying the Palestinians. They try to scapegoat, each other at times, right? But it's more complicated than that when you look at the history of the Balfour Agreement, the 48 War, the 67. You look at the history of the conflict, you see that it's not as simple as the Jews are doing it by themselves or the white man is pulling strings of the Jews. It is best described as elite, rich, white Jew and LGBT people doing it. Now, I'm going over time here, so let's get to point number 2. When people lie about who is in the right and to what degree, it is very ugly, and their spirit is very ugly. So let's think about this for a second. This is not a small problem. People who think that's not a big deal are very dumb. The type of people who see Dick Dastardly and the Joker and the Riddler and the Penguin, and they think that's not a problem. Okay? Gargamel, they think that being like that is not a problem. Lex Luthor, these people are sick people, and their spirit is sick, and they're passing that spirit on to their friends and their family and their offspring. So again, when people lie about who is in the right and to what degree, it is very ugly, and their spirit is very ugly. A malicious spirit that is scapegoating people out of greed and mental illness is an ugly spirit. All the most greedy and evil governing class people on the planet have the worst form of it. Point number 3. The main form of gaslighting on the planet is white cultural supremacy gaslighting, and whites, Jews, and LGBT people are the main people doing it. And by this, I mean they are disproportionately doing it and are the main people on the highest level of doing it. Okay, now, again, there's complicity. So in a sense, the entire world but me is complicit in it. We'll get to that at the end here. So yeah, that's the worst form of gaslighting. Think about who's exerting the most power on this planet. The Bible says Satan is the god of this world, right? In terms of who the masses of people are following. So what cultures are they in? What kind of governments they have? They're based on Roman governments. Rome, that in the Bible, is said to have crucified Christ as a character in the story. Symbolically, what have you. None of the cultures of their groups offer any sane solution to it. Nor is it fair for them to sabotage other races and straight people and then turn around and insist on being in charge. When you see that happening and people letting them, it is a clear-cut sign of a failed society. Now, if the world was fair, okay, there would, the American government would still have whites and Jews and LGBT people, right? What I mean by them insisting on being in charge is, cheat me out of my right to lead, for example. This very totalitarian, aggressive, control freak approach that you see to governance, very unfair. Using the economy, right? Using social and political and economic means to coerce people and to, really terrorize them into doing things, including sexual things. I mean, it's very, very sick what they're doing. Okay, and so we see that it's a clear-cut sign of a failed society. The economic distribution, the problems we have in America, the homelessness, I mean, on and on and on. It just failed. Okay, just because it could be worse. I mean, in a sense, it can always be worse, right? Doesn't mean it's not failed. It is a failed society, and people should scramble to correct it instead of pretending that it's not so bad or something. Point number 4. Okay, let us clarify point 3. There was once a rich white family whose members were in Freemasonry, college frats, corporate groups, the FBI, and the CIA. They worked together to use financial sabotage to help a massive network of people coerce people. Many Jews and LGBT rich people helped them as well as token minorities. They would say things like, "Is it our fault?" Saying, "Is it our fault, huh?" kind of thing, as they sought to coerce desperate people from the middle class and lower class. They scrambled to make sure people dated with a scale of white social norms and would try to blame it all on the Republican Party if anyone called them out on it. The Republican Party did make it clear why cultural imperialism is wrong by doing what they do, right? They're dead wrong. And publicly doing what they do to a large degree. But they were not the only ones doing it. As their members died, they were sent to hell, and one of them asked, "Why am I going to hell?" Christ said to them, "It is because God and I hate dishonest scales, and you who use them mislead people as they think that mere white social norms determine what is right and wrong instead of what is universally right and wrong. Have you not read in the scriptures, right, in the Bible, in Luke 12:57? Why don't you judge for yourselves what is right?" The guilty person answered, "Yes, but everyone was doing it, and I am not a serial killer or something." Christ then responded, "You helped form serial killers on the governing class level by doing the work of arrogant rich people instead of doing God's work. You even confuse children about what is ideal. How sick is that? It would have been better if you had a millstone hung around your neck and you were drowned as a child than for you to have lived how you did. What is worse than confusing people about what is right and wrong while putting substances in the air and food and miseducating them in school and using all kinds of other technologies to interfere with their ability to figure out what's right and to do it?" They focus on endless nonsense in school instead of critical thinking. And your types have subtly coerced them. On top of this, you control reproduction at every turn. So they are bred and raised to be susceptible to committing crimes against God and feeling like it is what they should do. Even feel me while I'm saying this. It caused my voice to sound weird there for a second, but hopefully you're mature enough to get over it. The angels then put a millstone around the guilty person's neck, and he was sent to burn in hell in a way that no human could imagine, as it was so intensely painful. He burned in hell forever. Hell had a sign that said those who are here were complicit with mass rape, mass murder, mass idolatry, mass deceit, mass drugging, mass assault, mass slavery, and every form of every sin, as they are outside of the divine order. They cheated the Royal African Falcon top martial artist out of his right to lead. This leads me to my last point. A logical society doesn't do those things. See my war on poverty plan, or ask about my war on poverty plan. Okay, ask about my global farm program plan, my healthcare analysis plan. Ask about my affordable housing plan. Those plans would create a much more logical society, a much more fulfilling society, a much more fair society. Thank you.